Uncle Doug.
Hello.
There is a time and a place for everything. And there's a time and a place for everyone. As somebody's British parent, I can't remember who, said, there's a lid for every pot, right? Meaning there's somebody out there for all of us. And I think that's a hopeful message. And I don't know where I'm going with this. Dan, can you rescue me from this?
There's a time to every purpose under heaven.
Yes, and a chicken in every pot that has a lid. I think I brought it all home. Tied it all up.
I think you did.
Yeah.
All right. That was a great segment. Let's move on.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. No, listen. Obviously, you're new to this whole gig. Clearly.
Every day I'm new to this gig, yes.
That was ridiculous. But unlike you neophytes, you newborns to the podosphere, I've been podcasting for a while. Like, since back in the days where every time I told someone I had a podcast, I had to explain what that was. And my mom still calls it a blog. As a matter of fact, Thank God I'm Atheist released our 450th weekly episode this last weekend.
Wow. Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that's narrowing in on 9 years that we've been doing this thing. That is not small shakes.
9 years.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Well, congrats to you and Francois.
That's literally the longest I've ever held a job of any kind. So that's kind of funny.
Job.
Right. Well, listen,
a hand job is still a job, so I guess a podcast is too. So
yeah, exactly. When you put something out into the world for that long, even something as silly and stupid as what I end up putting out, you start to know where you stand among your peers. Ha! Take that, other podcasters. They hate it when I say I'm their peer. I don't really know why. Anyway, what seems to have always stood out about TGIA, the feedback that we have consistently gotten from day one is that we're the nice guys of atheist podcasting, which is funny because we're pretty merciless when it comes to tearing into religious stupidity. But what we rarely do is rage.
I was going to say, have you listened to other atheist podcasts? I mean,
right.
It's a relative scale.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, raging is sort of one of the big hallmarks of atheism-themed podcasting. Mm-hmm. Not that I believe the stereotype that atheists are more angry than everybody else. We aren't. There's actually science to prove it. Yeah. But there's also science to prove that even atheists think they're more angry than the rest of the world, which is interesting. So let's all leave that stereotype in the dust from here on in. But when we atheists talk about the subject of atheism and religion, well, there's a lot in that topic that is worthy of some anger. So it's no wonder that that's what so many shows do. I think that's natural. It's just not what TGIA has always been about. Now, one of the big outcomes of this, of us being these nice guys, is that we have become a haven for people who are new to non-belief. Mm-hmm. People who have left their religion are taking their first baby steps into the undiscovered country of nihilistic, lawless decadence that we call atheism. And it can be a tender time for them. So when they fire up their pod blaster of choice and tentatively search the word atheism, it can be a bit of a shock when they find themselves bombarded by vitriol or swimming in Dawkins and Hitchens' deep cuts with references that are so inside baseball that they feel they couldn't possibly catch up. Yeah. So when they find us, TGIA, a couple of doofuses just trying to make sense of the madness in the world, they feel a little less intimidated. But the truth is that TGIA was never designed to be that for people. It was just a side effect of who we were and how we structured our show. So, Uncle Mark, when you and I started to talk about doing a new podcast and asked ourselves what hole there is to fill in the atheist podcasting world, after you vetoed my Best Boobs of Atheism review idea.
Well, it's not totally off the table.
Okay. Yeah. But I mean, it wasn't our first choice. And then I
just feel like I'd be a little bit at a deficit, but I'll catch up.
Well,
right. Well,
it's obviously either me or Eli.
It's it's Eli. God damn it! Now we don't have to do it.
Well, okay, that's true. The fur adds so much. Anyway, after you vetoed that idea and I nixed your atheist bike trails of Sweden deep dive, we landed on trying to create. Look, it's just that's where I fall short.
Well, there's a lot of good boobs on those trails, so
that's a good point.
Maybe there's some synergy here.
Maybe we've got a combination thing coming up. Okay, Look for our new show coming out in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Anyway, what we landed on was trying to create something for new atheists.
Yeah.
We thought, look, let's custom build a space where people who are fresh out of religion will feel welcomed and heard and seen. Mm-hmm. We can even try to give them some tools to be happier in their new lives as non-believers. Let's provide a soft landing for these fledgling little birds. Mm-hmm. And that's how the How to Heretic was born.
That is literally the true.
It is.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. The number of religiously affiliated people in this country is falling and fast. According to Pew, in the last 10 years, the number of U.S. adults who identify as Christian has fallen from 77% to 65%.
How much of that is just the COVID killing religious people?
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
I don't know. These are pre-COVID numbers. The post-COVID numbers are just going to blow our minds.
Yes.
The number who are unaffiliated has risen from 17% to 26%. That's about 30 million new nuns in a decade.
Wow.
That's almost a whole Canada of nuns.
That is almost a whole Canada of nuns.
By the way, my new band, Canada of Nuns, will be dropping our first album, Bike Trail Deep Dive, in August, so look for that. But of that 26%, only 4% are willing to use the word atheist when describing themselves.
Yeah.
And only 5% are willing to say agnostic. Most of them probably are atheists and agnostics, but they won't use those words. And that's due in no small part to the fact that atheists have been systematically demonized in our society for, ever. We've been demonized forever. We are a big, scary bogeyman that clergy have been terrorizing their congregations with since time immemorial. There's nothing we can really do about that. But there's another reason why people don't want to be associated with atheism, and it's a little more distressing to me. And that is that we have never learned the very first lesson that every successful new church has learned, which is how to make new people feel welcome, included, and safe. Mind you,
on your way to their wallet.
Right, exactly. And those churches have some distinct advantages over us. They're willing to use some pretty potent mind control techniques that we don't and shouldn't use.
Yeah.
And they have easy answers to questions that we have no answers to, or if we have answers, they're huge and complex and really difficult to understand.
Yeah.
And like idiots, we're honest about that. But even with all of their advantages, there's no reason we can't do as good a job as churches at welcoming these sweet new baby butterflies into our flutter. Now, I don't mean to condescend. These are mostly adults we're talking about, but make no mistake, and I'm sure many of our listeners can relate to this, for many people, leaving religion isn't just a change of perspective or philosophy. It's not just a matter of, I believe some different things now. It is a nuclear blast.
Yeah.
It changes everything.
Yeah.
So when I talk about fledgling little birds or baby butterflies, I'm talking about people, regardless of age, who in many ways are starting entirely from scratch. So for so many of these people, leaving religion means building a completely new worldview from the ground up. That their whole lives, their entire sense of what humans are, why they do what they do, and what their lives are supposed to be about, come from their religious tradition. Their concepts of morality and ethics, their understanding of fairness, and their place in the universe are all upended the second they admit to themselves that they no longer subscribe to religion. These are core-level identity issues. We're not just talking about what these people believe, we're talking about who they are. And suddenly, they're no longer sure about that. That can be a terrifying abyss to gaze into.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about worldview. Leaving religion also is a social earthquake a lot of the time. So for so many people, they find themselves suddenly, their friends, their family, the people they thought they could count on no matter what, abandon them. Their support system, their whole community, even their beloved traditions and customs, those can all come tumbling down. Add to that many people live in areas where nobody is allowed to not be religious, where they've never even met someone who's an out-of-the-closet atheist, and the sense of isolation and devastation can become unbearable. So, what can we do for these poor souls? As people who have been through this ourselves, or at least are aware of some of what they're going through, I think it's up to us to figure out how to roll out the welcome mat, how to bring them gently into the fold and show them that there's happiness and fulfillment on the other side of the religious veil, despite what they might have been told their whole lives. So, I've decided to put together some completely non-scientific, but hopefully useful thoughts on what we as a community should and shouldn't be doing when we welcome new non-believers into their new, better world. Some do's and don'ts, if you will.
All right.
And since people learn,
If
since
you
some
say
people
we're going
learn,
to waive the initiation fee, I'm hanging up the phone.
okay, well, just hold on to your butt for a second.
All right.
But I didn't want to, some people learn better visually, so I wanted to set up a visual aid. It's something that I think would be, if what I'm talking about is something that I think would be a good thing, I want you to imagine a donut, because donuts are welcoming. Everybody loves donuts. If it's something that might be less good, I want you to imagine the poop emoji. So, if it's do not, then it's a do-do, but if it's a do-do, then it's a donut. Got it? Do-do, do not. Donut, do-do. Clear?
I
think
need a
that's
helpful
clear.
mnemonic to help me.
Hold on. I've just got my yarn and thumbtacks. Okay.
All right, great. Let's move on. So, and you guys feel free to add to this list. I'm just sort of throwing shit out.
Yeah.
And we'll start with a donut. So I'll abandon the donut do-do thing. I'm sorry. I was dumb. Do remember that they are all new to all of this and just starting the process of untangling their own thoughts, feelings, and ideas from the ones that they were indoctrinated with. Do not expect them to get everything right all at once. Things like, things are likely to be a jumble for a bit. We can only process so much at a time. Maybe they've figured out that they don't believe in God, but haven't yet wrapped their head around how evolution could possibly be real. This is a good time to be gentle. Do keep in mind that these are people with feelings, not computers who need to be reprogrammed. Letting go of deeply internalized dogma is difficult and often traumatic. In my opinion, and I don't know if you guys will agree with me on this, I think it's more important to let them know they're safe than to make sure that they're able to pass an AP philosophy test.
Oh my God! Look, it's like you were saying earlier. And we've said this on other shows too, Dan. Is when you unplug from, especially a high stakes religion, high demand religion like the one we came from.
Right.
You unplug all that, where all the thinking's done for you, all the answers are there, the positions about political and social and moral, quote unquote, moral issues are made for you. When you unplug all that, well, you have to fucking start over.
Yeah.
Right? So you cannot expect people to know the process of evolution via natural selection on day 2. Right?
Yeah.
You can't expect them to have read everything Bertrand Russell wrote on day 3. Just, you pump the brakes, give people space.
I mean, I remember I left religion, and what's interesting is I left religion in part because I had gay friends who had clearly tried not to be gay, and it didn't work, and I just couldn't square that with what I had been taught about gay people from the church.
Right.
Does that mean that I was instantly non-homophobic when I left the church?
Right.
No. It was a fucking process. I had to go through some shit to actually coax my brain into accepting gayness as an okay thing. So it's all a process. We're not going to get there. Nobody gets there right away.
Yeah.
Well, and being overly dogmatic and hostile towards those that don't share that dogmatism, that's their thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not our thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, rather
Exactly.
than hitting somebody over the head with a gap in their knowledge and embarrassing them and making them feel stupid, maybe kindly point them in a direction where they might find the information. Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I
you
find embarrassing people unnecessarily is one of, it's such a bullying tactic. I hate it so much. I think some people deserve to be embarrassed often and as, and loudly, but, people trying to find their way, you know what I mean? Like that's why we call ourselves uncles, right? We're supposed to be protecting and kind and generous of spirit, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? That's what everyone should be.
We fail at that plenty, but that's what we're supposed to be.
Shut up, Dan.
With that in mind, because to me the concept, a lot of this, people leaving religion for the first time kind of go through a second adolescence. Like there's this, everything's new, they don't understand the world anymore sort of thing. So one of my do nots is do not be surprised if they become a little obnoxious for a while.
Yeah.
And also don't sweat it. I remember having long, deep conversations with one friend just out of religion, and then 2 days later, hearing her proudly parrot my exact words to somebody else as though she had invented the concepts. No sense that an attribution might be in order, just a philosopher explaining her new genius theory to everyone. There's an interesting sense of sort of know-it-allness that comes with this territory. Any listeners to Thank God I'm Atheist will remember a couple weeks ago there was an article in the Salt Lake Tribune by a Utah author named Meta Harrison. She recently left the Mormon Church and decided to write an op-ed about how lame other ex-Mormons can be.
I heard you guys do this on TGI. It's horrendous.
It was so stupid.
Yeah.
It was, she's talking about how ex-Mormons are just as dogmatic as the members of their former church. It was just...
And everybody demands that I drink immediately, and everybody demands I try drugs, and it's like, you're lying.
Yeah, that's not true.
That's a lie.
Everything she wrote had that new non-believer smell to it. She had clearly sat in on some ex-Mormon meetups and was uncomfortable with how stridently they were now opposed to their former religion. She hadn't yet processed everything that they had. And of course they probably made no effort to ease her in, and she interpreted that as them expecting her to jump straight into the deep end of the pool, which may have actually been the case.
Right, and so that's kind of unfortunate, and I think that one thing that we need to recognize, and you've touched on this in several ways, Dan, as atheist elders, if that's a thing, is that people are going through something very similar to the stages of grief.
I was just thinking that.
Right? That this is a huge life transition. It's huge. And so unfortunately, she's in some stage of grief. She just happened to kind of really publicly make an ass out of herself in whatever that stage is.
Well, she's like, I would say it's similar to, she's in denial and they're in anger.
Right.
Like they're moving through these things. She's so yeah, like they're at a different stage than she is. And I was for not a long time, but many years, definitely stuck in the anger state. And I was more strident than maybe I needed to be with people who were still in or just finding their way out. But it's part of the process.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's an interesting point because, if we look at that model, that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross model of grief.
Yeah.
Most people make, by the time they're listening to a podcast or trying to join a group, they've made it through the denial stage and they are in either anger or what was the next one?
But bargaining comes somewhere in there, right?
Anger. Oh, it's like anger or depression is, I think, the next one along. So we need to be gentle with these people. They are, they're in a rough moment.
Totally.
We're catching them in either anger or depression. That's not easy.
Right. And I think, and here's the thing I want to say about anger is Doug says, he's moved through the anger. I don't know that I entirely have. Right.
Well,
it used to
you can
consume
still
me though.
Right.
You can still be angry, but not be in the anger phase.
Right. And
Because there's plenty that makes me angry, but I'm not an angry person. I'm not in the phase of my processing of religion that is anger.
yeah.
I just, you can make me mad if, Jeff Sessions or somebody pulls some bullshit, it'll upset
but
me.
We're talking about kind of a resting state of anger rather than what you are having, which is, oh, that made me mad because that was a stupid thing for that situational anger.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about
exactly.
kind of the clinical stage of being an angry person for a while. And what I want to say about that is, we'll just take the Mormonism thing for one example. Is there's really an insistence in Mormonism that you are not entitled to be angry.
Right.
That there's something wrong with you, that it's a failure of spiritual or personal failure of some kind. So when you leave it, you're taunted by other Mormons. Oh, you're just angry. Oh, you're just saying, well, of course I'm fucking angry.
Right.
I was betrayed by everyone in my life. Everybody participated in this lie. So if you are in the anger phase, then I think don't let people tell you that. It's okay. You should be angry if there's something wrong with you if you're not angry. That people in your life who should have done their due diligence, your fucking parents and your elders, didn't, and they read you into this balderdash that they should know better by now. The information's out there. So it's a long way of saying you're entitled to your anger. I am way through my raging phase, which was a long time, because there were lots of failures of family in addition to just the religion one, and they were hard to tease apart. But I've learned to dance with it, where the anger used to be so controlling and so consuming. I've got control of it, but I still find it motivating. It's part of why I press record every week on this show, is to kind of help people through that period. But it is a motivating feeling. It is a motivating part of life.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair, and it does lead me to my next do. For those of us who are trying to welcome people into the world of non-belief, which is do meet people where they are.
Right.
If they say something that you think is silly or egregious, don't jump down their throat about it or mock them or whatever. Maybe ask them about it. Take a page from street epistemology and hit them with the old Socratic method. Keep it light, gentle, and playful. Remember that many people newly out of religion haven't ever been taught how to think critically. It's totally new to them. Mm-hmm. And we do them a much bigger favor to teach them how to think than what to think. Mm. So, with that in mind, I would say do not be dogmatic about what non-believers believe. We are not a monolith. The person you're talking to may be new to godlessness, but they're still a smart person. Just because they haven't read all the literature that you have doesn't mean that you're right and they're wrong. They may have an interesting perspective. And remember that we heathens don't all believe the same things. There are liberal humanists and conservative humanists. There are valid disagreements between thinking non-believers about things like euthanasia or capital punishment. There are atheists who oppose abortion. There are even good, thoughtful, educated atheists who think that Star Wars prequels are acceptable entertainment.
Nope. I'm sorry. We have reached
I knew that would
impasse.
get you, Doug. Look, as disgusting a notion as that is, if we want our tent to be big and our movement to be welcoming, we have to make room for even those prequel-loving monsters. So.
Yeah, look, there are. Well, I don't know about them, but speaking of monsters, look, there are terrible atheists. There are terrible people who are atheists. Yeah. And there is a far fringe racist right of atheism, and
and we should be clear. I'm not saying that we should tolerate hate speech, or anything like that. I'm not saying that just because someone's a new atheist means that you have to accept unacceptable thinking.
Right. Yeah. So that's one of the dangers, I think, of people coming out of one orthodoxy and kind of needing the methadone of another, is those rabbit holes lie out there. Doug was talking about QAnon and stuff, and so I think it's kind of incumbent on those of us that are perhaps not belligerent, violent, anti-democratic, misogynist, racist atheists to help to offer a place where that kind of rhetoric is not acceptable, and really lean heavily on the humanism and the pluralism that is one of the, beautiful gifts that skeptical thought and critical thought has given the world, right?
Yeah, so what I was trying to say in that is that it becomes actually more powerful. Our message of like anti-hate becomes more powerful if you direct it at things like racism, LGBT thought, that sort of thing, and don't direct it at things that don't deserve it, like they have a different viewpoint on economics or whatever.
Sure.
So that's kind of where it's something to be teased out. But I think that the more welcoming, the more open-minded we can be to them just sort of having whatever their opinions are, and you don't have to agree with them by any means.
Right.
But I'm just saying there are non-believers who think that atheists. I've seen so many atheists in groups yell at some other atheists because they don't buy into the same sort of dogmatic ideas about atheism that they have.
Yeah, the classic scene.
I don't think we need to be that dogmatic.
That classic scene from Life of Brian applies to atheists as well, perhaps more so.
Right.
Where it's we're not the Judean people's front, we're the people's front of Judea. I think, and to your point, Uncle Mark, being an atheist is not inherently virtuous.
Right.
Right.
Some people, people can believe all kinds of terrible things and not believe in God. Yeah. And that's, that is not only plausible, not only possible, it's common.
Yeah.
And,
Totally.
I think a lot of us and the people listening to our show and our community, we're atheists because we're, liberal humanists, right? Like that we're not liberal humanists, we're not liberal secularists because we're atheists.
Right.
Like our kind, I'd like to believe that our desire to be kind and to be gentle and to be accepting and inclusive, etc., led us to not believing in these dogmas.
Right. My empathy led me to atheism.
Right.
Interesting.
But atheism alone is not necessarily virtuous, and that's very important to remember.
Yeah.
That and as people fall out of religion, there are all kinds of flavors of atheism. I mean, there's not, but there are. Right? There's all kinds of groups that claim the moniker of atheism that you can fall into, and you might find community with. Some of those groups are not good, and so we as people who I think we have a better path, we need to demonstrate the empathy and the kindness and the acceptance that would help people find their way towards this form of atheism or this form of community, and not fall into some of those worst places.
If nothing else, we need to just demonstrate the kind of kindness that we want people to have.
We got to build the world that we want to live in.
Yeah.
I think there's something called the Golden Rule in some book somewhere. And for me, it's also, there's atheist groups that have membership and you sign up and you're part of it. And that's wonderful for the people who want it. Personally, I kind of fight the idea that there is an orthodoxy.
Right.
I don't think there should be. I think this is a huge spectrum of human beings. Look, I get emails into the show all the time. We have people that love Jesus and believe in Jesus who love to listen to our show.
Yeah.
And should we just tell them to fuck off? Because
yes, 100% yes. Fuck off.
Yes.
Fuck off. All of you Jesus lovers, out.
Yeah, but they find meaning in what we're doing, and they find meaning in our show, and I think that they're part of our community.
Totally.
Right? And they should feel welcome as well, so long as those beliefs are not, causing harm to other people.
Yeah.
Right. And I do want to hit on something that you said, Mark, which is the idea of atheist groups, because I don't think that groups necessitate a dogma.
Right.
I think that groups can be a wonderful thing, and that is one of my do's, actually, and I want to talk now to people who are in atheist groups. Do remember that new people to atheism, to skeptical thinking, many of them will be leaving their entire social network behind. They might have lost their whole support structure.
Yeah.
They're going to need new friends, people to help out when they're in need, that sort of thing. So churches are kind of awesome with that stuff. Mm-hmm. The Mormon church is like being in the goddamn mafia when it comes to like how they help each other.
Yeah.
And it's something that we can be good at too. So I think atheist groups should always be compiling resources. Now, a lot of these groups are way ahead of me on this stuff, but I just wanted to list a few things anyway, just because I think that I want us to be thinking in these terms. Have a list of places where people can meet other people with similar interests. Because look, as great as your group may be, not everyone is going to find a home there. So how wonderful would it be then if when someone first reaches out, you not only welcome them to your group, but you can also guide them to other groups where they can be their authentic selves and feel accepted. I also think that it would be great for groups to have a handy-dandy list of local therapists, doctors, dentists, etc., who are non-belief friendly, because that's not always an easy thing to find. Mm-hmm. Also, make it clear that you're there for each other. Help each other move, that sort of thing. This is tricky stuff. You know what I mean? When people lose their support network, it's important for us to be there to help them out with that.
Yeah, we do. Us as a little group unto ourselves, we do kind of an orphan's Thanksgiving. That's really important because if you lose family when you lose your religion, which happens very frequently, suddenly you find yourself alone in moments that are very challenging.
Yeah.
And so, do dumb stuff like that. Have 4th of July events. Here we have Pie and Beer Day, which is coming right up.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Look, this isn't meant to be a compendium of definitive ways to make sure everybody who leaves religion stays out and becomes a great ally in our righteous fight for a secular society. I just want to make sure we're having the conversation. It's important that we give this concept some real conscious thought because, the trends are in our favor, but in order for those trends to be of use to our movement, and I would suggest society, we need to make sure that when someone exits their religion, they don't take one look at us and go running to another nutball belief system.
Right. Or feel abused.
Or feel abused, or feel, downtrodden.
Yeah.
Because we weren't meeting them where they needed us to meet them.
Right.
And we need to make it clear that there's joy and fun and kindness on our side of the fence. That it isn't just a life of grumpy, angry misery the way we're portrayed in the churches and the media. Because look, we're well on our way to a much better society if we can keep the numbers flowing the way they currently are.
It doesn't look like that at the moment, but yes, the numbers are trending in our favor.
Right. And eventually we might be able to undo the damage that our current president is doing.
Yeah, and his Christianist madmen that surround him.
Right. The judiciary that they're installing currently. Yeah. So I think we can rebuild the now dilapidated wall of separation between church and state. We can relearn as a society how to trust the expertise of science, regardless of political affiliation.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, we need the numbers. We need people to join our fight. And people are skittish, scared little balls of emotion. So as much as we wish that we were all guided by the best parts of our logical intellect, we're mostly not.
Yeah.
We're slaves to our feelings. And that means that it's incumbent on each of us who have learned to live outside of religion to guide and help and embrace those who are just dipping a first tentative toe into the beautiful ocean of non-belief.
Yeah, and this is a funny thing coming from a podcaster, but what I think a real trick too is talk less, listen more.
Right. Yeah. That may not be our gig, but for all y'all, that's a great thing.
That's for you guys.
Because listen, if we aren't waiting with open arms, there are 1,000 preachers and woo peddlers that are.
Yeah.
So get out there and COVID embrace, somehow find a way to hug a new atheist and make them feel welcome.
That's right. Kindness and empathy go way further than anger and rage. And once you've given them that hug, give them the link to our Patreon. Because that's
exactly
how this shit works. All right. Well, thanks, Dan. That was very kind. It's not really our brand, but we'll allow it.
Good. Let's move on before they catch us.
Yeah.